All right, so we are moving on. This is our day 8, and we're talking about quadratics that have that are in vertex form, but they have imaginary roots. So for Miss Vote's class, I know that we've talked about if we have a quadratic, and we've talked about those quadratics that touch twice, okay, and then we've talked about the quadratics that touch one time, kind of like this. And then we've also kind of looked, like we looked at the end of an assignment the other day, we had some that were like this. And I asked you, why can't we factor to find the zeros? And we put it in standard form and we thought, okay, I can't factor this. And then we also looked and said we can't factor because it doesn't cross the x-axis. And so that's kind of what we're doing today. And so all quadratics have to have two roots. Okay? And when we look at these, like this, for example, have two real roots. Okay, we can find them. This one has 1, and it's a double root. Okay, or 0. Okay, and here's one. This one has 2 roots, but they're both imaginary.
Look at Mom.
Okay, and so today these are the pictures that we're looking for. These that are kind of floating up in space or down in space, wherever they are. And all their roots are imaginary. So I've got a few examples for you guys. So example here, number 1 is, what's the vertex? So this is no different than what we've been doing before, right? +1, +25. Okay, so I'm going to go over 1 and up 25. Okay, and then we talked about standard form. So let's expand this. So we'd have x squared minus 2x plus 1 plus 25. When I combine those, I get x squared minus 2x plus 26. So can we factor? And so at least for Mrs. Volt's class, we've talked about, you know, you can use Desmos, or we can kind of list them out, right? 1 and 26, 2 and 13. And I think we're kind of stuck from here. So we can't factor. Okay, so then last week we tried to solve, and we tried to solve using algebra, right? So we set it equal to 0, and I'll draw my picture here in a minute. And then we said x minus 1 squared plus 25, and we subtracted 25 from both sides. And what happens then is I have negative 25 equals x minus 1 squared. And then I square root both sides. And what happens is the square root of negative 25 is that number 5i. Okay, and plus and minus, right? We talked a lot about how you get 2 of them. So I need to add 1 to both sides. So then I have 1 plus or minus 5i equals x. These are my 2 zeros. And it's weird, right? Because I can't see them, because they are imaginary. This is my y-intercept here at 26. So this one's way up here, and it's floating in space, and it does have 2 roots. We just can't see them because imaginary numbers aren't on our xy axis. Okay, they're somewhere else. And back when we did imaginary numbers, at least for Mrs. Vote's class, I linked some YouTube videos, so I'm going to try to link those up again in case you're interested in, like, where do these imaginary numbers show up? And if you feel rusty about this, okay, you could Google or YouTube simplifying with complex roots. Complex roots. Okay? And so that's something maybe you would look up if you felt shaky on this from the last time we did it. All right, so another example here. And remember, when you are watching videos, you should pause to take notes, or just to sit and think about it, really, right? My vertex here is at -2, -8. And the difference I notice about this one's going to be a frown. So -2, -8. Okay, and this one's opening down. So again, I can already tell I'm not going to cross the x-axis here. I'm going to expand this. And as per my usual, I will run out of room. And my standard form then is going to be -2x squared minus 8x minus 16. So that means somewhere down here, right, negative 16 is my y-intercept. So my sketch is going to look something like this. That was a wonky one, but you guys know what I mean. And we're going to find, you know, pretty soon that we can't factor. I'm just going to write a no for now. And so someone in my class on Friday said, like, oh, can everything just be solved by factoring or algebra? So I always ask myself, can I factor? And the answer is no. And when I find the answer is no, then I move on to solving with algebra. And when we move forward later this week, we will talk about other ways. There's one more way that we're going to talk about to find an answer if you can't use algebra or you can't factor. Okay? So let's solve using algebra. I'm going to set it equal to 0. And so I'm going to move the 8 over here. And I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. And here's where I'm going to take the square root. Okay, so I'm going to get plus or minus the square root of negative 4 is 2i. And then I need to subtract 2 from both sides. So I'm going to put that negative 2 up front. Okay, we've talked about this too, at least in my class, that you could write it like this. Okay, if that makes you happier because you can actually see the 2. Okay, so again, we have 2 imaginary roots. I was feeling a little bad that I went into the space of the next one, but I noticed here that this is actually my standard form too, right? And so when we think about this one, we can think about x plus 0 or minus 0. So my vertex is here. 0, negative 12. Okay, and if I solved using algebra, I would set it equal to 0. And then I would add 12. So look at this one's going to have real roots. And I can already kind of tell because this one opens upwards. And my vertex was way down here. So I know it's going to cross. And then we need to practice that same skill. Right, plus or minus. And 2 root 3 equals x. Plus or minus. And so we could estimate these decimals, but they would be over here. So these are the 3 examples that I am going to do today. And you should be able to do them from here on out. So it says solve and find the zeros given simplified form. Remember, this means exact. Okay. If you have a square root of a negative number, I need I in it. And all the perfect squares are boiled down to, like, when I had square root of 12, I have to break it into this. Okay, so simplified means most exact form, all those things that we just talked about. Okay, and then after you get here, after 12, you're going to find these just kind of like some review. So you're going to kind of have to do this on your own where you're thinking to yourself, should I do factoring? Remember, that's our regular. In Miss Votes class, we do it with the x, right, with the product and the sum. Do I have to use that AC method? If none of those work, do I try with algebra? Okay, algebra will more likely work with your vertex forms. Okay, algebra won't work with this type of thing, right, because I have a middle term. So just kind of being aware of that. If you have that middle x, it's not going to work as well. But when you've got it in vertex form, I can already see. Number 15, I might just start right away with that. So that is your homework for today, 1 through 18. You guys should be pretty good to go. And we will have time for questions if needed.